Hi, team. I'm Fitz, your very noisy race announcer and fitness expert from Fitzness.com. And welcome to the Fitzness Show. Today, I have a spectacular guest that you are going to love hearing all about. This person is a two-time Boston Marathon champion, a New York City Marathon champion, a Houston Marathon champion, and a world champion in ultra racing. And she does it all in a chair. She is a champion hand cyclist, which I find to be the coolest athletes on our course. When I start a race, normally we send the chairs off first. And to me, they look like a bunch of Batmobiles. That's right. I'm standing up on a tower and there's, 10 to 20 Batmobiles lined up. And really what I want to say is start your engines, because they just look really cool to me. And I've never tried one. So my goal in life right now is to try racing push rim and hand cycle, and also pushing a chariot, because it's just such a really special part of the endurance industry. And if you're not part of it and you're thinking, what is she talking about? You might be one of the people who thinks you have to run if you join a race. So our races are very inclusive. We've got people who run, people who exclusively walk, and then a bunch of people who run and walk. And then for those who aren't able to go the distance on their feet, we have chair divisions. And it's really special because that means zero people have an excuse not to be a part of our endurance industry. So here she comes, the world champion, Wendy Larsen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for that great intro. And
Oh,
I love the Batmobile. I'm going to have to remember that.
yeah, every time. What I want to say is Batmobile set, go. We have to say things like chair set, but you know what? It's my microphone in my mouth. I could probably say whatever the heck I want,
I
right?
think we would all appreciate, the Batmobile go line. I think we would. So
Okay. All right.
that's just me.
I'm gonna do that. So uh I want to start at the start. How come you race in a chair versus on foot?
So I actually did start racing on foot in 2007. I was born with several rare diseases, including a primary immunodeficiency disease, which means I was born without a fully functioning immune system. So I get my immune system through monthly immunoglobulin infusions. That's a lifelong treatment. It's a disease that has no cure. That's how I have an immune system. And then I also have a rare connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So all of the connective tissue in my body is faulty. Connective tissue is like ligaments and tendons. And what should happen is they should function like a rubber band, stretch out and snap back in place. Well, when you have EDS, that connective tissue is faulty. So your ligaments and tendons tend to stretch out and they don't snap back. So you have a lot of dislocations. They can then lead to all kinds of other issues. I've had a lot of surgeries from my pelvic organs starting to fall out of place because
Wow.
they're held in place with connective tissue and ligaments and tendons. So just all kinds of different complications like that. I have mitral valve prolapse, where I have a floppy heart valve because heart valves are made of connective tissue. So the list goes on and on. But in 2006, and this is something you may not have known about me, I was actually in a really horrific car accident. And my right leg was completely impaled. It took about an hour and a half for them to cut me out of the car.
Thanks.
And I almost lost my right leg. It took 15 surgeries to reconstruct it. So my whole life, because of all these issues I had, I'd been told I couldn't play sports, my joints were too weak, all of this stuff by all kinds of doctors. So after that car accident, the reconstructive surgeon that reconstructed my leg, his parting words to me were well, you may walk again, but you'll never run a marathon. And it was said just kind of sarcastically off the cuff. And something clicked in my head at that point in time. And I decided, what have I got to lose at this point?
Right.
I'm going to go out and I'm going to start training to run a half marathon. So I did. And I was in a wheelchair at that point, and then I had to learn to walk again. And I started slowly running. And I finally did my first half marathon on my feet in 2010, which was something between the EDS and then the car wreck. It never should have happened, but I did it. And I was out there running. I use the term running loosely because it was extremely excruciatingly slow. And I was one of those back of the packers, barely crossing the finish line.
Just to be clear, back of the pack is the best part of the pack. So,
oh yes,
for you.
Oh yes, oh yes. It's the party in the back. It's
That's
the party in the back. And, and I have so much appreciation to this day for those that are in the back of the pack. I don't think many people realize just how hard they work because they're out there on that course for so long.
Yeah.
So I started running, but eventually the EDS did catch up with me. I started having a lot of issues with my dysautonomia, which is a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. My blood pressure was tanking. I was passing out. My knees were dislocating. And I was becoming a real danger to myself. And it was at that point that one of my physical therapists suggested hand cycling because I'm extremely stubborn and I wanted to keep racing because I love the endurance community.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, maybe try a hand cycle. You would be less of a danger to yourself. So I searched and I had seen hand cycles at the Run Disney races. And then I searched, did a Google search, hand cycling Houston. I came across a group called Achilles International. I sent them a message and they said, sure, come on out and join us. We've got a loaner hand cycle that you can try out. And the first time I got in one, I fell in love, head over heels. I knew that was what I was meant to be doing. It was the kind of thing where for the first time in my life, I felt like I was working with my body instead of against it.
Wow.
So yeah. And then actually after I started hand cycling is when I developed the spinal cord injury. My spine became super unstable because of the EDS and one of my vertebrae fell down on top of the other.
Nice.
And that caused the spinal cord injury. So yes, that's kind of how it all started though.
So incredible explanation, both for people who are sophisticated in medical issues and amateur, I think, and novices, I should say. That was great. Obviously, you speak well on your own behalf. So simple questions before we move on. They said not to play sports. When you were a kid, did you play kickball and do anything?
Oh, I would play every sport I could, and I would immediately get injured, and my parents would take me to the doctors, and the doctors would say, well, we don't know what's wrong, or she just has weak joints. She shouldn't do this. And it was just, I constantly was in a lot of pain from it. And back then they really didn't know what was going on. And so they just they would either blow me off and say it was just all in my head, or they would just say, well, her joints are too weak. She shouldn't be doing this. So, I would play a sport for a little bit and I would get pretty good pretty quick and then wasn't able to play again. And I went through, softball and swimming and track and dance and, you just you name it, but never for very long because I kept injuring myself.
How interesting. But a natural athlete. I like the fact that you just were good at whatever you picked up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't ever get a chance to go anywhere with any of it, really. But.
And now, so you race in a chair. Can you walk around? Wendy, I don't know this. Are you able to?
So my spinal cord injury is an incomplete injury. It's in my lumbar spine. So I do still have some movement in my legs. It's kind of patchy where I have feeling and where I have movement. So I can stand, I can walk a few steps aided, but I can't really just get up and walk across a random room. I will sometimes try and I usually fall. So yeah, and my doctors will remind me, that's why you have a chair.
I love your smile about it. Like, I'm trying. You're a troublemaker.
I mean, I am a troublemaker. Yes. My poor doctors.
It's classic. So What year did you pick up hand cycling? Was it 2007?
No, it was 2017.
Oh gosh.
So
Okay.
2007 is when I started running.
Okay. Okay.
Running in quotes, because I don't know that we really could call it running. It was more like shuffle, walk, try to go fast as you can.
Counts. It certainly does count. So 2017, you try out a chair and you love it. How quickly
Yes.
did you register for your first race?
So I think my first race was probably about 4 or 5 months later. It was a local 10K, I think. I can't even remember now if it was a 5K or 10K. I
Okay.
think it was a 10K here in Houston. My first race in the hand cycle, I remember I had a running guide because, I was brand new, I was slow. I had a runner that ran alongside with me. And then it was probably only about 6 months before I did my first full marathon.
Wow.
And I actually qualified for the Boston Marathon in my first full marathon. And I didn't even know I did at first. It was a complete surprise to me.
And had you even considered
No,
qualifying for the Boston Marathon? It
no,
just happened to happen.
no, no, it never even crossed my mind. I was just out there just having fun, enjoying myself. And, I'd been training really, really hard because this was a huge goal of mine to complete a marathon. But it never crossed my mind that I would actually qualify for Boston. That just wasn't even, didn't even give that a second thought. So it was
So
exciting.
interesting because you say your first race, you went so quote unquote slow that you needed a running guide. And the reality is, for folks who don't know, these hand cycles move incredibly fast. In fact, many courses can't host hand cycling because you go too fast and they are not set up for your safety. There's a good chance you could spin out and wipe out. Like, we don't do hand cycles at the Buffalo Marathon just because it would be hazardous to the hand cyclists. I believe, I'm not even sure if we do have push rims, but we do not have hand cycles. So how did you go? How many miles per hour do you think you were going at the start? And how fast were you going when you qualified for Boston?
Oh my gosh. I honestly, I don't even remember. So, the qualifying time for female at Boston of my age is 2 hours and 35 minutes
Okay.
to qualify for Boston. So how many miles an hour is that? I don't know.
Like,
12 miles an hour,
that
maybe?
sounds about right. But you know what? My announcing partner, Rudy
I
Novotny, would know that.
he probably would, yes. So I don't even know. So, but that's the qualifying time. I believe it's 2 hours and 35 minutes. It might be 2 hours and 39 minutes, something along those lines. So my first, no, I think it's 2 hours and 39 minutes, and my first marathon was 2 hours and 35 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah, and my first 10K, oh, I have no idea. I don't focus on numbers like that
Right.
a whole lot.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm not one, I couldn't tell you how many races I've done or how many marathons or half marathons.
Me neither.
I'm not a numbers person like that.
Yeah,
I just go
okay.
out for fun.
We've got some championship numbers here. So
Well, yes.
when what is your fastest marathon in a
My
chair?
fastest marathon is 1 hour and 22 minutes, and I think it was like 17 seconds.
Okay. Okay. So there's the
Yes.
difference. There is
Yes.
slow enough your first race to be led by an actual person on foot, qualifying
Yes.
marathon at 2:30-ish, and then
Yeah.
your record breaking pace is 1:20. I mean, what is
Yes.
that? It's 20 miles an hour?
It's approaching 20 miles an hour. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild. That is wild.
Yeah.
How hard
It,
is it? I mean, I haven't tried
it
one. I'd love to try one. It just looks like
We'll have to get you on one someday.
please.
It is really, really tough. I mean, you think about it, you are trying to do something with your arms that most people do with their legs.
Yeah.
Think about the size of your thighs compared to the size of your upper arms. You have a lot more muscle in your legs than you do your arms. Then when you're thinking about it compared to a bicycle, when you are riding a bike, you are up over your pedals in more of a power position. So you can get up out of your seat and get more power getting your body weight over those pedals as you're climbing a steep hill, for instance. In a hand cycle, if you're in a racing hand cycle, you are laying essentially flat on your back in a fully recumbent position. So you're in less of a power position because your pedals are out in front of you and you are using just your upper body. So your core does not factor into it at all. You're not getting any use of those core muscles when you're in a fully recumbent hand cycle. And so it's all arms and shoulders. So I like to describe it to people like when we're climbing a hill, think about climbing that rope in your elementary school gym class, trying to get to the top of the ceiling, but you're not using your legs at all. You're just pulling yourself up with your arms. So you can kind of think about it in those terms. So yeah, it is really, really tough.
So do you mind showing folks who are watching this? This will run on audio podcast, but then we'll release the video. Can you show them those big guns of yours?
Oh my
gosh. Your arms are really impressive. Look at that. World champion.
I mean, I already worked out today and then rested. So
where is it hardest for you? Is it shoulders? Is it biceps, triceps? What about your forearms? Tell us what's going on with the hands.
So, I mean, yeah, you're using all of those muscles. So even like my forearms, I have like a lot of muscles in my forearms. Because you're trying to use every single muscle you can possibly recruit to get the most power you can. So it's, my biceps and my triceps get really sore after a really tough workout. Some of the upper back muscles, your pecs, you get, a lot of power from your pecs also. So yeah, I mean, after a tough workout, you feel it. But it's mostly upper arms, biceps, triceps.
And then some of the other obstacles to using a chair. I've seen chairs have to pull off mid-race to repair a tire. Yes. What are some of the other technical details you have to deal with racing in these chairs?
Well, when you're in a hand cycle, it's configured differently than a bike. So we have gears and shifting and all like a bike does, but it's all on our front wheel and it's flipped upside down. So when you take it to a bike mechanic, they'll look at it if they've never worked on a hand cycle before, and they have to kind of reprogram their brains and think about everything being upside down and backwards from what they're used to working on. But yeah, when we're out there on the race course, it's like a bike. Whether you're in a push rim or a hand cycle, you have the potential to have a flat tire, to have issues with your brake, to have issues with your steering. So, anything essentially that can go wrong with a bike, it can go wrong with a hand cycle or a push rim. A push rim, they don't have the gears that we do. So less issues with mechanical problems with a push rim than a hand cycle potentially. But it's really important to take really good care of your equipment too, and to try to minimize any issues you have on the race course. So, there's a lot of maintenance. I'm, constantly cleaning my chain, and I have a checklist that I go through just almost daily, checking tires, checking wheels, checking my shifting, checking my brakes, all of that.
Have you had any mechanical issues during some of your biggest races?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think, it happens to everybody at some point or another. So 2 weeks ago was the 24-hour World Time Trial Championships. And the way that works, it's an 18-mile lap, and then you have a pit area at the start finish. And that's where your crew and your mechanics and all will be, is in this pit area. So you ride straight for 24 hours. So I think it was my third loop around, my steering dampener went out on me. And with a hand cycle, you have this little piece that is very, always causes problems. And it helps keep your front fork straight because when you don't have a lot of use of your legs and you're trying to steer with your arms and pedal and get all your power off of your arms, you need this stabilizer to stabilize your steering. So about the third lap, my steering dampener decided it was time to just pop. So my fork kept flopping over sideways. So I'm there, and there was a 3-mile climb on this course. So trying to climb with a broken steering dampener and keeping my fork stable was pretty bad, pretty bad. So, but I finally made it back to the pit area. My husband, who's my crew chief, he's
Okay.
dealt with broken steering dampeners many times, so he was able to get it fixed for me quickly.
Wow. And then, I mean, they're very expensive bikes. Did you invest in your own? How does that work?
I am very lucky. I had a sponsor that bought my current hand cycle for
Okay.
me. So there's a lot of organizations out there that will help you get into hand cycling and help with grants to get you into a hand cycle. Achilles International is one that has chapters all over the world, and they very often have loaner hand cycles. And that's how I got started, was with a loaner hand cycle from Achilles International. And then there are different organizations, Team Catapult, Challenged Athletes Foundation, a bunch of different groups like that where you can apply for grants to help with your equipment funding. So that's how I got my first hand cycle. The one I have now is a very, very high-end racing hand cycle. And I did have a sponsor that allowed me to get that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's interesting the things I see. I mean, obviously the hand cycles and the push rims, those are designed for racing, but sometimes I see people come out in a regular old wheelchair and I just think, oh, bless your heart. That is the absolute
Yeah,
hardest way to do
yes,
anything in the endurance industry. So it's so wonderful that there
yes.
are so many organizations that help. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. I want to talk about how people can get into this, people who need another option. But before I do that, I want to talk about some of your championships. So you're a two-time Boston Marathon champion and you've
Yes.
broken the record twice. Is that correct?
I did. I did. Now somebody else broke it this year. I didn't do Boston this year. Somebody else broke it. So maybe I'll go back and I don't know. I'm really focused on ultra racing right now. So I haven't been doing many marathons.
That's
But
okay. So we're still backing up though, because that
yeah,
is, there's all these wonderful races, but that's the most iconic marathon in the world, I
it
believe.
is.
When
Yes.
did it become a glimmer of possibility to you where you went from qualifying, oh, that's interesting, to, you know what, I'm going to win that thing? How did that all?
So it was a couple of years before I actually even applied to Boston after I qualified. It was one of my doctors that convinced me to do it. Because you have to fill out medical paperwork and stuff in order to get into Boston as a hand cyclist or push rim. So my physical medicine and rehabilitation specialist, he's a runner and he's volunteered for different marathons and, medical doctor capacity and stuff. And so he knew the process and he knew about this. And he was actually the one that convinced me finally, because I just didn't feel like I belonged there. It just was kind of overwhelming to me. So he finally convinced me. And I think it was during COVID. It was early on in COVID. And so I finally applied and then I decided, well, if I'm going to do Boston, I probably need to get a coach. So I I found a coach. I still work with him to this day. He is amazing. Um, and once I started working with a coach, because I knew at that point, I'm like, I think I could be pretty good at this if I got a little bit more direction. And instead of just going out and writing for 3 or 4 hours a day and not knowing really what I was doing. So started working with the coach, and it was just, maybe 6 months into working with him. And it was amazing, amazing the progress I made. And when the race started getting closer, we started talking about, like specific goals and what he felt like I could do. And it was crazy to start thinking about that and realizing that he was telling me that he thought I could do times that would have me potentially breaking the course record.
Crazy.
So yeah, it was nuts. It was crazy. And I didn't tell anyone beforehand because I just I didn't know if I had it in me or not. And I was kind of coming out of nowhere with this. And yeah, yeah. So
So when do you think, okay, I think I'm going to try to win it. Is that it? You finally, I mean, you have to say it out loud at some point. I'm going to try to win
it
this
was
thing.
probably about a month beforehand. Like originally I kept saying I wanted to place in the top 3. And then, just conversation after conversation with my coach. And as I saw the continued improvement and, he and I talked more and more, I was like, yeah, I think I want to try to win this. And so, we were talking strategies and this and that. And so, yeah, so that was the goal, but really nobody knew that was the goal except for me and my coach.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
then if you don't tell people, they can't be disappointed that you didn't win. I get it.
Right. And it's a lot of stress and it's a lot of pressure when you start throwing stuff around. Like, I want to win Boston Marathon. It's nuts. It's a lot to deal with, all of the pressure and stress that comes with doing stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those who don't know, when a race like that happens, we send the hand cyclists off first because they're the fastest and they do have the capacity to mow everybody else down with their speed. So you get the first go of the day. Did you take off in front? Were you coming from behind? How did your first Boston Marathon
So
championship?
Boston is a little unique. They actually line you up according to your projected finish time so that you're starting in a grid formation where you kind of should be. And it's a downhill start. So for Boston, for hand cycles, it's a controlled start. And the first half mile, there's a pace car and you cannot pass the pace car. So it's kind of crazy. So we all lined up. I think I was in like the second or third row the first year, something like that. We lined up. I knew drafting is legal in hand cycling. So my coach and I had talked ahead of time of potential people I should be drafting with. So, we go and I took off, lost the people I was supposed to draft with.
Okay.
So there were 2 other people that I drafted with a little bit, but mostly I was on my own for the whole race because the top men were way out in front of me. And then there was kind of me. And then there was the rest of the field a little bit further behind me.
Did you have any idea how far behind you the other women were?
I did not. So in the first Boston, the one thing my coach told me is make sure you know where the other women are and you don't lose them. That was the one thing I was supposed to do at the start because it's kind of crazy. It's kind of chaotic at the start. What did I do? I lost the other women. I didn't know if they were in front of me or behind me. And so the whole race, I was just, at that point, all I could do was like, okay, this is my race plan. This is what I need to do. And I just need to execute what I know I can do. And so I was not convinced even after I finished that I had won. I actually had to ask somebody, I'm like, did I win? And they're like, yes, you won. And I'm like, okay.
Did they have tape for you? Did you break the tape?
No, they did not have a tape. That was why I was confused. I was like, I don't know if I won or not.
Okay.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. So yeah.
So you find out you've just won the Boston Marathon. How
Yeah.
does that affect you?
It was just kind of disbelief at first, to be honest. It was just like, did I really just do that? And, after I won and everybody else won, and I was talking to a couple of the other, other athletes, a friend of mine, she and I have become really good friends over the last few years, but she won Boston the year before I did. And she told me, I remember her saying, she said, okay, just be prepared because you're in the, the little athlete village area and it's closed off and there's gates around. You're in with, the elite runners and all of that. So it's pretty secure. And she told me, she said, as soon as you exit that gate, she said, just be prepared because you are going to start getting so many, you know, phone calls and requests for interviews and texts and everything else. And I mean, I don't think it was 5 minutes later, and my phone is just blowing up. I could not keep up with everything. My email is blowing up. And then I exit that area, and immediately there's somebody standing there asking, "Are you Wendy Larsen?" I'm like, "Yes." And so, it was crazy. And then I had a couple of the Houston news channels, you know, calling me and saying, "Hey, can we do an interview?" I'm like, "I'm not at home." So yeah, I was staying with a friend and I ended up having to set up in her study and do a Zoom interview. Just all kind. It was crazy. Yeah. The whole thing, it was nuts.
And then, so Boston, there's prize money,
Yes.
significant prize money. That's
Yes.
fantastic. Were you hoping for that, or was that just a great icing on the cake?
Oh, it was just icing on the cake. I mean, yeah, it was just icing on the cake. I didn't even let that really play into any of my preparation or anything. I was racing for me to push myself and see what I could accomplish. So yeah, the prize money is just icing on the cake.
Okay. And then were there parties and things that night that you went in?
Yes, they do an after party. So um I'm trying to remember where it was the first year. I know the second year it was actually at the baseball stadium there in Boston. And it was like up in a private VIP area. And they had, food and beverages, and we could go out and look down over the baseball stadium. And and I got to meet Des Linden, and I don't even remember who else, but a bunch of people. So yeah, it was really cool going to the after party for the winners and all of that. Yeah.
So you're officially Boston royalty, which is a pretty cool thing in your life.
Yes.
They will take good care of you forever, I believe.
I hope so.
Yeah. And what year was your first championship? Was it 21?
Yes, 2021.
Look at this.
And oh my gosh, you still have that.
I still have it on. Yeah, I
Oh
haven't taken it off.
gosh, no way. I had to take mine off. I think it was for a surgery or something. They made me take it off. So
And for those just listening, I'm still wearing at the
that's so
21
cool.
Boston Marathon. It was the first post-COVID, and they
Yeah.
made everybody check for that you didn't have COVID. But once you
Yes.
were approved, they put this little bracelet on your wrist, and
That's so cool.
that's my first and only marathon I've ever done. And I just thought,
That's so cool.
yeah, thank you.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I thought all the other marathons I'm involved with are for everybody else. My job is to be the big chief cheerleader, right? And so
Yes.
this one was for me. So
That's
I
so
don't know when
cool. I
it'll come off.
love it. I love it. Yeah, it was a really special race. And that one was the one that got rescheduled because of COVID.
That's
And
right.
so it was in October.
Yeah.
It was actually on my 50th birthday to the
October
day.
21st. Is it the 21st?
11th, October 11th.
Okay.
Yes.
That was your 50th birthday?
It was my 50th birthday. I won the Boston Marathon on my 50th birthday.
Hot damn, Wendy. How about
I
that?
mean, yeah, you can't write a better story than that.
No. So you broke the course record. You went back the next year, broke your
Broke it
own
again.
record.
Yep.
Was
Yep.
that experience bigger and better or less than?
Um, it was different.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it was better or worse. It was very different because, the first one I went in, nobody really knew a whole lot about me. I think I took everybody by surprise. The second one, I went in kind of as the favorite, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, what's Wendy going to do this year? What's your time?" And and so it was it was a much different atmosphere. Um, Everybody knew who I was coming back. And so it was, there was a lot of pressure. I was really feeling the pressure, but it was, at the same time, I was a little bit more relaxed, I think, because I knew what to expect. I knew the pre-race procedures. I knew the course. I had the confidence because I had done it before. So I knew I could do it again. So, yeah, it was very, a different experience. No better, no less, just
Okay.
different. Both were amazing. Both were amazing.
And then what about winning New York City?
So New York City is an interesting race because they limit the speed of hand cyclists. So because of all the bridges, there's a couple of bridges on the downhill. There's a sharp turn at the bottom. So for safety, they limit the speed of hand cyclists. So when I went into Boston, I mean to New York, I knew that I was doing times that were faster than what they would actually let me do.
Okay.
But I did New York City in 2019 and I had a really bad race there. It was my slowest marathon ever. I had just found out I was in the middle of going through all the pre-surgery stuff for my pelvic floor reconstruction, and they found a mass on my ovary. And that was just before the New York City Marathon. So I'd seen the oncologist and all of that. I managed to convince my oncologist, my urogynecologist, all my surgeons to let me do that race. And they felt like it was safe to wait on the surgery.
And to be clear for those at home, she's talking ovarian cancer. You were diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Yeah.
Yes.
Terrifying.
So, yes. So 2019 was a rough race. Mentally, I was not all there. I had some mechanical issues. I finished, but it was tough. It was really tough. Mentally, I wasn't 100%. And then I had all of the issues, all of that. So I really wanted to go back to New York and kind of have a redemption race. Yeah. So even though I knew I was so much faster and I was going to get stuck behind the pace car and all of that. So I went back and in 2022 to New York, and just, it was a fun race. I had brake issues again at New York. I'm destined to have brake issues. So, and it was on the very first bridge. So I'm going down the bridge. My parking brake got knocked sideways on my hand cycle and it was rubbing. So at the bottom of the very first bridge, the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, I had to pull over and fix my brake. And I'm watching the lead pack in the pace car go on their way. So got my brake fixed, got back in my hand cycle, took off, caught back up with the lead pack and the pace car and just stuck with them till the end. So, but it was fun because I couldn't go any faster than the pace car. So I'm just sitting behind the pace car, just all and thanking the supporters and all of that. So it was a fun race. It was a fun race, but it's a different race because you can only go so fast.
How interesting to win a race you're not allowed to do your best at.
I know. So it's kind of, yeah.
And how far back was second place?
So the second place female, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes behind me.
Okay. So you had to, yeah, that's a significant victory. It's not like everybody was held off and then, your ho-hum pace is the one even second place couldn't catch up to. So very impressive.
It's my speeds are not typical at all.
That's the best kind, the atypically fast girl. So Boston, New York City, Houston, any other interesting championships in the marathon category?
I think those are the ones that really stand out to me. I've done a lot of other smaller races, and I've done Disney and Austin Marathon, Woodlands Marathon, some rock and roll marathons, but the big ones, those are the ones that stand out to me that really have kind of made the biggest impression on me and the path that my hand cycling career has taken.
So have you been approached by corporations? Are you spokesperson for any equipment or apparel?
So I have, I'm sponsored by the Feed, which does nutrition, hydration
Okay.
stuff for athletes. Tifosi Sunglasses, they're one of my sponsors. So yeah, so some different ones like that. And then there's a real estate developer here in Houston that sponsors me. So yeah, some different groups like that. So and
How,
then Challenged Athletes Foundation, Team Catapult, they have also, sponsored me as well. So
that's wonderful, Wendy. I love the fact that you have all of this hardship, all your whole life of people telling you can't and you shouldn't, and then your body partially agreeing with them, saying, yeah, cut it out. And then at 50, you
yeah.
find a way to be champion of one of the most iconic road race in the entire world. I mean, it's a really special story. And for all of those who are out there who are declaring they can't because of much lesser reasons, I hope they're listening to you trying to
I'm
kicking
just
themselves in the can.
yeah, I'm just really stubborn.
It's a
But
great
I
answer.
think a lot of it, it's attitude and accepting what your body can't do, truly can't
Right.
do, and finding other ways to do things and learning to adapt.
Wow.
It, and that really was key, was just getting it through my head. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to be able to run, but this is what I can do. And finding what I can do and really focusing on that and devoting myself to that. So, yeah. And then, after that, with the ultra cycling and the stuff I've been doing with ultra cycling, doing stuff now that really no other hand cyclist has done.
Male or
So,
female?
because right. Yeah, male or female. So Race Across the West, that was the race I did in June, and it is an ultra cycling race. It's 925 miles,
Ah, okay.
starts in Oceanside, California, ends in Durango, Colorado, and it's around the clock. So it's not like the Tour de France where you go sleep in a hotel at night. You ride straight through. So, and I was the first recumbent hand cyclist to do that race. So male or female, male
Amazing.
or female. So
What would it, I've talked to Dean Karnazes. Dean's our legendary ultra runner who,
uh-huh.
I mean, gosh, Dean just never stops running, but he's talked about running while asleep. Have
Oh
you
yeah.
cycled while sleeping? What is that
Oh,
like for you when you're sleepless for
oh,
so
it's nuts because when you're going for 3 or 4 days straight, and you do start hallucinating. And there was one night I have a crew of 6 people. They follow behind me, in follow vehicles at all times. We have a headset to communicate back and forth. And the way it works with my crew, we've got 3 on and 3 off at all times. So the crew is getting rest. Half the crew's resting while half the crew is following me. So, and my husband was my crew chief. So there was one night that in the middle of the night, I just started like drifting off to the side of the road onto the shoulder and onto the grass. And
yikes.
apparently Chris was in my headset going, Wendy, you okay? Wendy, what's going on? No response. I came to a dead stop. And so he jumped out of the van to run up to me. He said he fully expected me to be sitting there like bawling. Like I just could not go on because this was like 3 or 4 days into the race.
Yeah.
And but and then he saw my head slump over to the side.
Oh,
And now I'm strapped in. I've got a seatbelt. And I started leaning over to the side as he got up there to me. And he realized I'd just fallen asleep. I'd fallen asleep while I was riding and just drifted off onto the side of the road. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So, and then there was one night where I was following a little white brick house down the road
oh,
for miles and miles and miles.
that
I
doesn't
don't,
make any
I
sense.
total sense. I have no idea, but that's what I was doing. And it kept me focused. And I was like, that house is just moving with me. There's that little building. I wonder what's in that little building. And I just followed it down the road for miles and miles. So had a conversation with my son one day, asking him to bring me Starbucks.
Oh,
And we got to one of our scheduled stops, and I asked somebody, I'm like, did Matthew get me my Starbucks? And they're like, what? I said, Matthew was supposed to get me Starbucks. What are you talking about? Matthew's not here. I'm like, no, I talked to him at the last stop. No, you didn't, Wendy. So, oh yeah, it's crazy. Your mind does some crazy stuff during
so
races like that.
I think I speak for everybody listening is why? Like, why do you want to go do anything that keeps you awake for 4 hours? What inspires that? And when you're in the middle of it, you start asking yourself, why am I doing this? This is outrageous.
So I don't think I ever asked myself, why was I doing this? I think there were probably times I asked myself if I should be doing this, but you know, I do it because I can.
Yeah,
Because I have not yet found my limits.
I love that.
And so many people impose so many limits on me for so many years. And I've realized that those, none of that was correct. None of that was okay. That I set my own limits. And I don't yet know what those limits are, but I want to find out. And so I just kind of keep moving that goalpost further and further and further. And, I'm sure I do have limits, but I don't know what they are yet. And I want to know what they are.
So
So,
if you're out there doing some wackadoo race and your body
yep.
finally gives up and you can't go on, you are going to actually celebrate that. Like, I figured out my limit. This was too much. Is that where your mind
Yeah,
goes?
I mean, probably so. I will probably say, you know what? I pushed myself as hard as I could. And that's something that very few people do. So, I think I will be pretty happy with myself at that point. I'll miss doing it. I enjoy doing it. I love that kind of challenge. I love going out there and doing stuff that people thought I couldn't, that nobody else is doing, and I hope at the same time that, by me doing this, that other hand cyclists say, hey, I want to do that too. Now we realize that, oh, if she did it, I can do it, because there are other people out there that can do it. I know they're capable of it. And there are a few hand cyclists that, have expressed to me that they want to do this. So, you know, I think there's like this whole other world of ultra cycling that can be opened up to hand cyclists, but somebody has to be the first one to do it. And, and then hopefully others will follow and get into it, because it's an amazing challenge to be able to push yourself like that and really truly find out just what you're made of.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I love the human body and the way it can produce in all
It's,
sorts of weird, wonderful ways. It's
yes.
very exciting. So it's a great segue to the hand cycling community. So there are rules. You said in Boston you had to have doctors share evidence that you could only
Yes.
participate in a chair. What is the criteria for participating in a hand cycling race? Anybody, even if you broke your leg, if you wanted to get a hand cycle and go use it for exercise, you certainly could. But what are the criteria for participating in the endurance industry that way?
So for most races, they don't have any kind of requirements.
Okay.
So anybody with any disability that wants to participate can. Boston is a little stricter. That they require documentation from your doctor that you have an impairment that is classifiable by the International Paralympic Committee. So that starts to get into all sorts of weird stuff, because I'm actually not classifiable. I am not eligible to compete in the Paralympics.
Really?
What people don't realize, and even some people that are classified don't realize this, is there are two, actually there's multiple parts, but the two first things are you have to have a classifiable impairment and you have to have a classifiable underlying condition. So my spinal cord injury is a classifiable impairment. However, my spinal cord injury was caused by Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is prohibited from competing in the Paralympics.
Huh.
I know it makes no sense.
Wow. Okay.
It's crazy, but it is there in black and white in the rules. So I am not eligible to compete in the Paralympics.
So how did you qualify for Boston if the rules are
because
similar?
because you have to have a classifiable impairment, which I have, which is a spinal cord injury.
So it's either or, not both.
You have, well, it's a classifiable impairment. They don't care about the underlying condition.
Okay.
You have to have the classifiable impairment. For me, it's the spinal cord injury. So, yeah. So it's like this whole weird thing. So the Paralympics, I always tell people, there are a lot of issues with the whole classification system. And it's very unfortunate, but it's also the only system we have. I've got a lot of very close friends that are in the system that, are going to go to Paris, and I'm going to be there supporting them 100%. But yeah, it sucks for people like me who have, a spinal cord injury, but it was caused by the wrong thing. So I'm not able to compete.
I feel like if you opened your mouth, you might be the one to get them to change that.
We've kind of gone wrong and round. A couple of my doctors, when I tried to get classified and they told me no, because I have EDS, I was not classifiable. My neurologist, I think she about came unglued, and, I think my doctors want to pursue it more than me, because there's a lot of stress and pressure. And, it's something that I had to spend a long time thinking about. Was I going to pursue this and, and try to make a change? And it was a very, very tough time for me when I found out I could not compete. And I have really fallen in love with the ultra cycling side of things anyway. I'm out there doing things that nobody else is doing. And I love those distances. That's what I want to be doing. If I were to compete in the Paralympics, I'm doing distances of, 20, 30 miles kind of thing. And I don't want to do that. That's not my strength anyway. So I think in some ways it was a blessing in disguise, so that I could take this whole other path that I really, really have fallen in love with and have been doing really well with.
That's great.
So,
That's great. Know who you are.
It's yeah. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Tell me about your racing chair community.
So, yeah, the wheelchair community has been so supportive of me. I have friends that, I met through hand cycling that live in other states that are absolutely some of my best friends. And, they've been so supportive. I've had so many ups and downs over the years, and they're the ones that are always there to pick me back up. And, if I have something, I've got a friend that lives in Florida, and she has a house in Orlando, and I was having a really, really tough day one day, and I texted her. I'm like, I'm on my way to your house. And she said, okay, come on. And so, they're just, it's friends like that, are there for you and there to pick you up and encourage you. And, have been through all of these crazy medical issues. So they kind of know what you're dealing with, and, what life is like on a day-to-day basis, and what it's like having to deal with the constant doctor's appointments and the complications from your illnesses and this and that. And then trying to find time to train and to work on, your nutrition and your sleep and everything else that you have to work on, because it becomes really overwhelming at times. So it's so nice to have that community that kind of knows where you're coming from and has your back. And, and it's my hand cycle friends that, texting me the morning of Worlds a couple weeks ago and messaging me and wishing me luck and, checking on me to see how I did afterwards and all of that. So yeah, it's a great, great community.
Yeah. It's yours is a magical success story, Wendy. And I probably feel that way about most of those folks out in chairs. The fact that they're out racing, that's such a big just such a big deal. And it's a tribute, a testament to those people and to science and just people finding a way, right? We're going to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, having that, I guess, very tenacious spirit
Yeah.
to get out there and, despite everything, because everybody that's out there racing in a, hand cycle or push rim, everybody's got a story. Everybody's story is different, but everybody's got a story. But, it's everybody's overcome a lot and it's gone through a lot to try to figure out how to keep moving forward and how to keep racing and how to fully engage in life and with everything around them. So yeah, it's we can lean on each other and boost each other up and all of that when need be.
Okay. So I got a couple of goofy questions, but I need to
Okay.
know. Is there a place where you chafe in a chair? Where's the chair chafer?
Okay. So for a hand cyclist, it's my underarm right here along my bra line.
What are you chafing on? Is it your own clothes?
Yes, it's my own skin, my clothes. Yeah, because you're just doing this motion and your your elbows hopefully are tucked in pretty close to you because you want to be as aerodynamic and as streamlined as possible. So it's just that constant chafing, rubbing right there. So yeah, during Race Across the West, it was pretty bad. It was like, oh, it was awful. I had a nurse on my crew and she was bandaging it. And
Right.
yeah, oh, it was bad. It was bad.
Okay. I know that. What is your biggest crash at a race? Have you crashed hardcore?
Okay, so I have crashed a couple times, but not in a race. But
Okay.
I guess my worst incident was I was actually in Florida. I was training with a couple of the men who, former national team members, stupid fast. And so here I am, me trying to keep up with the men and my training partner who was in front of me, and I'm trying to keep up with him, get on his draft bar. And I love him. I love him like a brother. And he's just, he's encouraging me, come on, you can do it. You can do it. And so I'm focused and, our feet are out in front of us and right up next to our front wheel. And my left side is the one that I don't have as much control over. And I wasn't paying attention and I did not have my foot strapped in like I should have. And my foot flopped over into the spokes of my front wheel.
Ouch.
It was kind of bad. And it was, yeah,
Did you topple? Did you tumble?
I did not topple, but yeah, my foot was pretty mangled and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it was pretty gross. And all you can do is look at it and like, well, at least I can't feel it.
Oh, little.
So yeah. So that was pretty bad, that one. And he was in front of me and he just heard it and he thought I had like completely rolled my hand cycle. I think I kind of freaked him out, but yeah, so that was the worst that I've done, because it was pretty bloody, gross, broken. Now I have like rolled my hand cycle, but I actually haven't been injured as badly when I've done that. I wasn't going fast enough.
Okay. That's crazy. All of that is so wild. Um, I know you guys go so fast. And then I think this is no, I've got a couple more ridiculous questions. You're so cute. I can tell, like you care. You're an athlete who wants to look cute. You got the pink hair. And what about coming out of a championship? You finish Boston and you've got helmet head. What do you do in a hurry to look adorable for the media?
Nothing.
What?
No, nothing. Oh, I've got some of the worst post-race photos. I just, you know what? I figure I just won a marathon.
There you go.
I don't care how I look. If you care how I look, that's your problem because I just did something pretty freaking impressive. And that's what matters at that point in time. So when I'm not racing or anything, then I try to look cute.
Okay.
But yeah, I used to care a whole lot more, but I've just gotten to where I don't care anymore. If I am in my hand cycle, I am not going to have makeup on and I may have helmet hair and It is what it is.
I love it. I love it. That was the right answer. But I was curious. There's stuff.
Yeah.
I remember when I was fighting, I had to do my hair in all sorts of weird ways so it wouldn't end up in my face.
Yeah.
Those weird ways looked pretty stupid. So as soon as I was done with the fight, I would have my corner guy cut the ponytail holders out so I could let it down.
Oh, yeah.
One time he cut my hair and I had this like big chunk missing. I know.
Yeah. Well, I used to have really long hair and I actually cut it about 2.5 years ago because it just got to be too difficult to manage under the helmet because I have really thick hair. And, you know, when you're racing, you want everything to be really aerodynamic. And so I was constantly like French braiding my hair to get it back and, you know, out of the wind. And it was too much to deal with. So I whacked it all off.
Well, that's cute. It looks cute. Wendy, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on my show.
You're welcome. It was fun. Yeah.
And then you have a new website. Is it new or is it just recently updated?
So I think I started it like about a year ago and I haven't updated it as much as I need to.
Where's the best social media for people to follow you then?
So on Instagram is the best place to follow me. It's Wendy.Larsen, and that's LARSEN.handcyclist.
Wendy.Larsen.handcyclist.
That's Instagram. And yes, I'm hoping over the holidays to get my website updated a little bit better because I haven't updated it since Raw in June and I need to update it. So yeah.
Maybe that'll be your inspiration for the holiday break. Yes. And then my assignment for you is to come race some of my events.
I know. I want to. I really want to. And I've looked at it. It's been hard to work it into my schedule though. You need to come announce a race in Texas.
I would love. I have announced in Texas before, but I don't have anything on my schedule right now. So let's harass a race director. And
okay, I know when to harass. I'll harass him.
Texas is my second favorite state. Florida will always have my heart, but I love it's a very American state. There's something special about Texas, right?
Yeah, I like Texas.
Yeah,
born and bred Texan.
It's so good. It's a great state, and I will happily come make happy noise for y'all.
Yes.
That would be awesome. All right, beautiful girl. Thank you so much, folks. If you haven't done so yet, go visit Fitzness on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube and say hello. Don't just follow, say hi. I listened to your podcast with Wendy, and she was awesome because I'm always looking for more social media besties. And I love you guys. Wendy, I need you to tell them all to get to work. Say, get to work.
Get to work. Get to work. Get out there. Just do it. Just do it.
I love you all. Bye.
Bye.